Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Semua sihat eh? Okay, today we're going to continue from last class. We have already discussed about the relationship between the demand elasticities and excess burden and the incidence of the price tags. Any question about that? So today, today I'm going to look at a few more, related concepts. And then we are going to look at a very important rule, right, in terms of how does a government design or apply an optimum kind of taxation on goods and services. So that is our main job for today. I will first of all look at a few of the things that we need to look at. Now, number one is ad valorem tax. The ad valorem tax. Now, what is ad valorem tax? Ad valorem tax is a tax that is in percentage of the price. So we call it ad valorem. So, there are two types of tax. One is the unit tax, which is just in terms of money. And the other is the ad valorem. So ad valorem is the tax that is ad valorem. Ad valorem tax. Now this is in terms of percentage of the price. So if you have, let's say, the tax rate is 10% or 20%, then that is ad valorem tax. Okay, so the tax is percentage. For example, tax is 20%. So if it is 20%, and given the price P, so what is it? It's 0.2 multiplied by the price. Okay, and if the price is say 20 ringgit, so 20% out of 20 ringgit, that will be equal to how much? $4 or 4 RM. Okay, so that is in terms of percentage, and that will depend on the price, of course. If the price is equal to 40, then what is the tax? The tax will become 0.2 times 40, then will become 8 ringgit. So in terms of percentage, the advantage is that it will increase according to the price. The higher the price of the good, the more tax you collect. All right. So the tax here is the tax, correct tax. The tax is 20%. Tax is 20%. So it's not exactly equal, The tax is 20%. That is 0.2. Now, when you multiply by the price, it's not the tax rate anymore. So that will be equal to your tax collection. It's not really tax collection. It's tax collection per unit. Okay? Yeah, tax collection per unit. So here G per unit. Correct? If you want to compute the total G, okay, and the total G will be equal to what? Will be equal to this tax here per unit, all right, which is $4. You have to multiply by the quantity. Okay, so the total G will be equal to 0.2 multiplied by the price multiplied by the Q. Okay, the quantity. So that is the total government revenue or the tax revenue. 0.2 multiplied by P is just the what do you call it? The tax per unit. Okay, so here will be the tax per unit. Itu dia betulnya. Okay, tax per unit. So if you look at the change in the price. So if you look at the price, okay, price before the tax, we call it P equal to P0. And then the price after the tax will be P1, okay, equal to P0 plus. All right, what is the increase in the price? The increase in the price will be, I think I will just use P because it will be more general. P plus T times P. So this is the tax per unit, okay? T times P. So that will be equal to what? It will go to P1 plus T. So the increase in the price is not just a simple P plus, say, 20 cents, all right? The new price will be P multiplied by the tax rate plus the price, okay? Just like what we were doing here. So example, if the price is equal to 4 ringgit, 20 ringgit. If the price initially before the tax, ini P0 lah, equal to P, equal to say 20 ringgit, then our P1 is equal to what? Is equal to 20 plus the tax is 0.2 times 20, which is equal to 4. So our new price is 24. Okay, all right. So that is the price, how it affects the price. Now, how it affects the price will affect how the supply curve will look like. You know, how the effect on supply curve will look like. So under the ad valorem tax, you will see the following. You see the supply here, KS, and then you got the demand function here. Now, after the tax, T, okay, equal to some percentage ad valorem tax. T equal to T%. Then your supply function would go up like that. So that is your MC plus T. Okay, so that is ad valorem. You see the difference is only this thing here. As we can see, okay, the tax here T. And then as the price get higher, then the tax will be higher. You see, because the tax is in terms of percentage. So that is ad valorem tax. Everything else will be the same. Okay, you look at the equilibrium, that is E0. You look at the equilibrium after tax, will be E1. The effect is similar. Okay, you have a difference, or you have the higher price for the consumers to pay and lower price for the firms they receive, and also the change in quantity downward. And then you have the excess burden. Everything similar, all right? Okay, and probably, you know, for the same price, you may have maybe excess burden will be higher lah, under the ad valorem tax. But that is depending on, you know, on the magnitude of the tax. So that is ad valorem tax. So I'm not going to go into detail about of this because our analysis will just use the unit tax, right? Because the effect is similar. Ad valorem tax, you know, you have to draw the supply function upward like that. Will not be very easy. So we just have to look at the understanding, okay? Understanding that ad valorem tax is how it looks like. Okay, all right, that's number one. Now, number two, we look at the statutory incidents. Okay, that statutory incidents are statutory incidents versus the economic incidents. Okay, here is the thing. Now, statutory incidents is the imposition of the tax. Which party will have to pay the tax? Okay, here, which party will have to pay, is impose the tax. So when you impose the tax, you have to pay, okay? You have to pay to the government, impose the tax. And we look at our analysis so far, the tax is imposed on the sellers or on the firms. So that affect the supply, okay? Supply function. Now, as we can see, the economic incidence is different. That's how the change in behavior in the market will be okay, or how does the tax, which is imposed on the sellers, how it changed the behavior of the economic agents in the market. So the economic incidence we already see different, all right? So the tax is imposed on the sellers will do here. Last time I was not sure the term, but the term is forward shifting. The firms will increase the price, okay? And the tax will be shared by, or the incidence of the tax will be borne by both parties. So transfer some of the burden of the tax, okay? Burden of the tax will be on what? On the consumers. And that will depend on the elasticity lah, okay? And of course, and also the firms. So the point here is there will be some forward shifting, okay? The burden will be transferred to the consumers, at least some of them. And that will depend on elasticities, which we already have discussed. Okay, so the economic incidence is different than the statutory incidence. All right, okay, now, what the government can do also, the government can impose the tax on the other party. All right, on the buyers, okay, on the consumers. So that will affect the demand function. Now, if the tax is imposed on the buyers, what happened then? That means the buyers will have to pay the tax to the government. All right, impose the tax. That will affect the demand function. Now, if you look at the diagram, let me draw just a simple diagram here. You look at the diagram, so you get S there. That's the demand. So that is the one that is the one that is going to be changed, and the tax is imposed on the seller, on the buyers now. All right. So if the tax is imposed on the buyers, what happened to the demand function? Is it going to be shifting to the right or shifting to the left?
To the left, sir.
To the left. Why left? How do you explain that?
Because when tax increases, it reduces their income effect, so they would reduce their.
So that's right. Now, simple explanation is that if the tax is imposed, okay, with tax, that means the price now becomes higher. All right. So if your price become higher, your quantity demanded will become low. Okay, your demand will be lower. So what you see here, the tax, due to the tax, your demand will shift to the left. All right. In other words, yeah, I think that's the that's the, or another way to look at it is that with the tax, with higher price, at each P now, okay, at each P, we have what? We can buy less Q. Okay, so one way to look at it is like this. You have HP, let's say this is P. Initially, before the tax, you buy, say here, Q0. Say Q. Now, with the tax, okay, with the tax, that means the price is higher, okay? So the price is higher. At that price, you will be able to buy a smaller amount of Q. Q1. So for each price, Q is lower. So therefore, the demand function will move downward. by the amount of the tax. Okay, so the effect is slightly different. Not slightly different, similar lah. You know, you have the equilibrium here, E0, all right? And then you have here the new quantity. So now I take out that thing. You have here P0, okay, Q0. I think I'm going to draw another diagram. But our theory is this. If the tax is imposed on the consumers instead of the firm, the market effect is the same. Okay, the market effect, I'm sorry, I forgot the word effect. The market effect is the same. So we call this tax equivalence. Okay, tax equivalence. Or is that another word? Equivalent tu betul dah. The first term tu tax equivalence ataupun incidence equivalence. I check. Sometimes, you know, there are so many terms. I think tax equivalence. Betul. So we call it tax equivalence. Now, what does it mean? It means that the effect would be the same. Okay, the effect on the market will be the same. The price will decrease. The quantity exchange will be lower, and then the excess burden will be the same. So let's look at the tax equivalence. Now, if, okay, you must have if the tax is the same, nah? If the tax T, okay, is the same as what you have earlier, okay, same as the tax which was imposed on the sellers. If the tax are different, then everything will be different. So the same tax as imposed as what we imposed on the sellers. Now it is imposed on the firms. Suppose it is imposed on, I'm sorry, not on the firms, on the buyers, on the demanders. So the effect will be on the demand function. All right. So let's look at the diagram. I will draw the diagram again. This one, I think I will draw it more proper. You have here the Q, that's the price. And then that is our demand function, D0 before the tax. That is our supply function. We have the equilibrium E0 here. All right. Correspond to Q0, that is the price, P0. Now, after the tax is imposed on the buyers, the effect is on the demand function. The demand will shift downward by the amount of the T, okay? So in other words, if the demand is equal to P, now, after the tax, then our demand will be equal to P minus T, all right? So that is the effect. Or if you use marginal benefit, that will be P marginal benefit minus T. So that will cause our demand function will go downward to D1. So that is the T. Okay. So as you can see here, this is the E1, but remember, due to the tax, the prices are not for the consumers and for the firms will not be the same. So you got here Q1, and this is, okay, that P. What P is that? You remember that is the amount of the tax. Okay, so this P here whose price is that? Is that the price for the consumers, or is that the price the firms will get?
Price for the firm.
That's the price for the firm. Okay, so this is the price of the firm. I think the equal to P2. Okay, we use P2. And the price for the consumers is the price of the firm plus the tax. All right. So that would be our price of the consumers. So the tax is equal to PC minus PF. Again here, all right, PC minus PF, that will be equal to PC minus P0 plus P0 minus PF. So that is the burden of the tax on the firm and on the sellers. So everything will be just the same as what we were doing. So this is the share of the burden of the tax on the consumers, and this is the burden of the tax on the firms. All right. So you will see here, the revenue would be that rectangle. The excess burden would be the triangle. Okay. So that is the excess burden. That is the G, and everything else the same. You will see quantity will go down. The price consumers pay will go up. Okay. And the price the firms receive will be smaller. And of course, the relative magnitude will depend on the elasticities of demand or the elasticities of supply. So that is what we call tax equivalence. It doesn't matter, okay? It doesn't matter about the statutory incidents, whether you impose the tax on the firm or you impose the tax on the consumers or on the buyers. The effect on the market of the same tax, okay, of the same tax will be what? Will be equivalent, will be the same. So if we go back to the diagram, to the original diagram that I draw earlier, where was it? Yeah, I think I draw one diagram. Oh, this one. Okay, if I go back to this original diagram, if the tax is imposed on the firms instead, the same amount of tax, all right, then what we will see is that the demand function will shift downward by the amount of the tax. So the shift of the demand will be creating the same market effect. So that would be our demand function. So D1, okay, that is the T. And what you see here, the equilibrium will be the same. The PF will be same, PC will be the same, Q1 will be the same. Excess burden, same. Government revenue, the same. So that is what we mean by the tax equivalence. It doesn't matter who is imposed the tax on. The market effect will be the same. Okay? Or in other words, the market incidence will be the same. Okay. Any question? All right. So that is on the thing. So next, I would like to look at what we call the excess burden. There is a proper formula. So if you look at the book, they give you a proper formula for the excess burden. It's like, go to page, okay, you go to page 413, and also you see the page on 409, okay? So one is for the ad valorem tax, the other is for the unit tax. So you will see that the excess burden the full formula, okay? So I will discuss. Okay, you look at the formula. Look at first, 409, okay, on page 409. And then that is for the unit tax or the price tax. And then you look at page, the other one, on page 413. Okay, they are similar. Okay, if you look at the things, they are similar, except the price and the Q. So I like this one better. Okay, so it doesn't matter whether you use the one that is on page 409 or use the one on page 403. So the excess burden is equal to 1/2. Actually that comes from the rectangle, triangle formula, half. Okay, but now you have T squared multiplied by P0, Q0. And then you have the elasticity of supply multiplied by the elasticity of demand. Then you have the elasticity of supply minus the elasticity of demand. So it's not as simple. Don't worry about this, okay? Don't worry about that one. Or if anything that you want to calculate, we use the simple formula, okay? Now this P0, Q0 is easy to get because this is the price and the quantity before tax. So you don't need anything after tax. So before tax, and this is the tax rate, and these are the elasticities. So this one is easy to imagine. You have, the price before tax multiplied by the quantity before tax, and that is simply the expenditure. Okay, the expenditure on that good. The only difference is this: you have now T to the power of 2. All right, so we call this square rule. The excess burden, okay, excess square rule, which come from here, imply, all right, the excess burden will increase. It's a negative value, okay? We know it's negative value. Increase here means absolute value, absolute number. Will increase, we become higher. With what? With the square of the rate, okay? Square of the T. It's not just increased by the T. It's increasing by what? By the square of the T. So the effect of the tax is much higher because it's effect, by the square. So example, let's say T is equal to, 2 ringgit. Okay, now you see the T is increased to 3 ringgit. The effect on the excess burden is not by just T. It's by what? By the square of the T. So the effect will be what? By a factor of 4. Okay? So you will see the excess burden is also increased. It's not double, increased by the square also. If the T is 3, then what is T squared? T squared is 9. You see? So you will see the effect of the excess burden is not increasing by simply with T. It is increases much higher, much faster, because it affected by what? It's affected by the square of the tax. So that's why you call it square rule. In other words, square rule means the effect of the tax on the excess burden is squared. Okay, is the square of the tax. So it's much higher effect. Okay, all right. Okay, next. Next, I would like to look at I've done the tax equivalence, and then I look at the algorithm tax. Okay, now we're going to look at the optimal taxation. Now, in reality, the government imposed tax on many goods. Okay, tax will be on many goods, not just one good. So that's we call it optimal taxation on goods and services. So sometimes you use the word system. Okay, system meaning that you have more than one good, and then you probably tax differently, on the different goods. So you call it a tax system. And then what is the optimum tax that you want to impose on the different goods? So this is what we're going to do. Now, you recall about this. How does the elasticity of, now we focus on the elasticity of demand, okay? Elasticity of supply, I don't think I have time to do that. Okay, now the elasticity of demand. How does it affect the burden of the tax on the consumers and on the firm? If the demand is more elastic, who will bear the burden of the tax more?
The firms.
The firms. If the demand is more inelastic, the consumers will bear the higher burden of the tax. Okay, so that one we have to recall. Okay, number two, what about the excess burden? If the demand is more elastic, what is the excess burden? How does the excess burden change?
Larger.
More elastic, larger or smaller?
More elastic, larger excess
Larger
burden.
again. More inelastic, excess burden is smaller. Okay, so when you look at the optimal taxation, these are the things that we will have to look at. The relationship between the elasticities of demand or supply, but we focus on the demand, and how it affects the burden of the tax on the both parties, and the excess burden on the economy, right? So that is the principle, okay? That is the understanding that you should have. So now, what is the rule here? Now, when the government design a tax system and you want to have optimal taxation, the rule is you want to minimize the total excess burden. Okay, total excess burden. I want to minimize the total excess burden. So that is the rule. Okay, so the rule here, you want to tax many goods, all right? And then you want to tax to minimize the excess burden. Okay, here, optimal taxation means the government will have to choose, all right, to choose tax rate, different rates, to choose tax rate for many goods. Okay, for many goods, to raise, okay, to raise a certain amount of revenue, G. So that G is fixed. Let's say the government want to raise 2 million, okay? So I want to raise a certain amount of revenue, call it G bar, in order to minimize, okay, to minimize the total excess burden. The optimal taxation is the government will want to choose tax rate for different goods, for many goods. So that's different. For different goods, by raising a certain amount of revenue. Raising, I think, because we have too many two. So here we change. Raising, I think the meaning is there. If you just want to rephrase, raising a certain amount of revenue to minimize the total excess burden. So this is the objective. The objective is to minimize the excess burden. And by doing that, we have to choose a different tax rates, for different goods. Given you want to raise a certain amount of revenue. So maybe you have to rephrase, you can rephrase. To minimize the total excess burden by choosing different tax rates for different goods. Given I want to raise a certain tax revenue. Probably that one is better. Okay, but do you understand what I mean? Yeah. So the objective is, I think I rephrase again, to minimize. Jadi sedap dia bunyi. To minimize the total excess burden. All right, to minimize the total excess burden by charging or choosing, okay, different tax rates for different goods, for many goods, or different goods, given, okay, given a certain tax revenue, G bar, that you want to raise. Itu lagi sedap lah bunyi dia. Sama dia. Okay. So that is the optimal taxation principle. Okay. I want to minimize the total excess burden. When I say total excess burden, it's not the excess burden on one market. All right. It's the excess burden of the many markets. Let's say the market for, one good, say rice, you have excess burden. And then you have a market for Coca-Cola, Coke. So there is another excess burden. And you have a market for cars. Okay, even in cars, there are so many types of cars. So we just generalize cars. There is excess burden as well. So given all these different goods, I want to charge a certain tax rate in order to minimize the total, okay, the total excess burden. So you may have, okay, one market with higher excess burden than another, but the total will be minimum, right? So that is the optimal taxation principle. Now, this principle is based on this thing. Let's simplify our goods. Let's consider only two goods, say X and Y. All right. So what you want is this. We want to choose, okay, T for X and Y, for X, Y, such that the percentage change in the demand of X is equal to the percentage change in the demand for Y. Okay? So here, the tax should be, you choose the tax such that this is true, okay? This ratio is true. The change of X divided by X, or the ratio of the change of X to X, is equal to the ratio of the change of Y to Y. In other words, the change, or since the demand is downward sloping, this is the percentage change, all right? So this is percentage change in X must equal to the percentage change in Y. All right, so that is the rule. So the percentage change of X must be equal to the percentage change of Y. So that is the rule that the tax we should charge. So we call this, apa kita panggil apa benda ni? Kita panggil benda ni, ada nama dia. Okay, this is called the Ramsey rule. Okay, Ramsey rule by the name of the economist, Ramsey. So if you Google, this Ramsey, he is a good economist. He doesn't live that long. I think he passed away in his 30s, but his contribution is quite It's quite significant. So this is economist, Ramsey. So that is the Ramsey rule. So what is the Ramsey rule? Ramsey rule is this. You want to choose T on XY such that the percentage change in X must equal to what? The percentage change in Y. So that is Ramsey rule. Now this Ramsey rule as it is, it doesn't make that much sense. So what we do, we'll modify this a little bit. We call it the modified Ramsey rule. So from there, you get the modified Ramsey rule. You have the tax on X multiplied by the price elasticity of demand for X, and that is equal to the T of Y multiplied by the price of elasticity of Y. So you have here Tx, Ty, they are the tax rates on X and Y. All right. Ex is the price elasticity of demand. Since we're talking about price elasticity, we're not talking about the income elasticity for now. So we just call it elasticity of demand. Price elasticity of demand for X. And similarly for Y, okay? So Y, price elasticity of demand for Y. So that is the modified Ramsey rule. The tax rate multiplied by the elasticities of each good, they are equal. And to make more sense, okay, you just bring similar terms to one side. So what we will do here is we bring the T to the left, so you got Tx, Ty, Tx, okay, equal to Ex over Ey. So that is, I think, by looking at that, that can make more sense. Or, how you can intuitively get a better relationship, kita buat macam ni. Tx is equal to the elasticities ratio multiplied by Ty. That one you can relate the tax rate across goods. Okay, I'll give you an example. So here, right, we are going to determine. You want to find or determine the tax based on what? Based on the elasticities. Okay, based on elasticities. So, for example, if the elasticity of X is equal to -2, or you can use absolute value, but because at the end, the negative will cancel out. And then the elasticity of Y is equal to, say, -0.5, 0.05. So I put into that ratio, then what do we get? I get Tx over Ty equal to -2 divided by -0.5. Okay, how much what is the ratio? 2 divided by 0.5, that will be equal to 4. Is that right? 0.4, 4 ke?
4.
4. Betul ke ni ratio? Go back. Benda ni Tx, Ex, Ty, Ey. Silap. Bukannya Ex over Ey. Should be Ey over Ex, I didn't see that thing. Patutlah bila dapat tu lain macam ni. EY over EX should be EY over EX. It shouldn't be EX over EY. You know, I think some people observe that, but you just keep quiet. Tadi kalau tahu benda ni silap, bagi tahulah saya. You know, because that thing was in another page. I cannot see that page. So I terbuat silap. So it should be what? EY over EX, not EX over EY. So EY over EX. So next time, if you observe that I make a mistake, cakap lah. Okay? Jangan main diam je. If this thing I didn't realize, then everything is wrong. So what you got will be wrong lah. So next time, you know, I'm sure one of you will observe this, tapi buat diam je. So next time, don't be too quiet, you know? Don't be too quiet. I don't want you to be too noisy, but don't be too quiet. If I make a mistake, I make an error, tell me, okay? If you know, I think at least one of you will realize this, you know? So next time, if you observe a mistake that I do, say it out, okay? Don't have to wait. And now I have to wait. You know, I'm wasting my time because I only realized when it was here. So next time, bagi tahu cepat. So you got Ty over Tx. And that will be the other way around. So kita tukar je lah benda ni, senang cerita. So Ex is equal to negative 0.5. Ey equal to negative 2. All right. So you put into here Ey over Ex, that will be equal to negative 2 divided by negative 0.5. That is equal to 4. So what does it mean? It means the following. The ratio, okay? The ratio of the elasticities, Ey over Ex, is equal to 4. So you must have the tax, okay? Ty over Tx must be also equal to 4. All right? So how do you relate to that one? That's why if I put into this form, easier to see. So you got Ty, ini bukan Ty ni Tx over Ty. Tx over Ty, kita cuba, okay? I think that one is Tx over Ty. Tx over Ty, Ey over Ex. Ey is negative 2, Ex 0.5. Betul lah tu. Go back to the formula, Tx and X. So Tx over Ty, okay, betul. Now it's betul. So you got Tx equal to 4. You bring the Ty, Tx to the other side. So you have Ty equal to 4 multiplied by Tx. Okay, probably this one you can see better. If the ratio of the elasticities is equal to 4, okay, the ratio of the elasticities of Y to the elasticity of X is equal to 4. So now, how do you tax the goods of X and Y? By this relationship. Anybody? Tengoklah tu, tengok gambar dia. Okay. Nazmi. How do we do the taxation then? Anas, how? Oh, are you here? Okay, I think you're here. Your name is here. Anas, how do you do? You have this relationship here. Then how do you tax X relative to Y? Nabil? Siapa-siapa lah. Okay, Nur Hani. Okay, Nabil. Apa dah? I heard somebody was saying something. Oh, okay, Anas. Apa? Try.
So will it be that the tax rate for Y is 4 times bigger than the tax rate of X?
So, you see here, Ty equal to 4Tx, right? So in other words, if the tax on Y must be what? Must be 4 times the tax on X. So that is the rule, okay? So the tax on Y, yeah, you're right, good, thank you. Tax on Y is 4 times, okay? 4 times, I think I use times rather than multiplication. Four times tax on X. Now it makes sense. Okay, you must tax Y higher than X. Oh, ni terbalik. Terbalik lagi ni. Dia TX over TY. Saya buat silap 2 kali ni. TX over TY. Bila jadi macam ni, okay? silap. Sebab apa? You know, when you have the conclusion, you relate back to the elasticities. X is more inelastic. Is that right? Then Y. So by intuition that we learned earlier, the tax on X should be higher. Okay? So when you see here tax on Y is higher, that means something wrong. So what I realized, ratio ni pun silap lagi. Okay? Ini mungkin saya ingat nak balik kampung ni. Okay, TX over TY tu. Dia silap. Bukannya TY over TX. Dia TX over TY. Okay? So what you were saying is correct lah based on that. Now we change. Okay? We change. It should be TX equal to 4TY. So it is good, you know, when we make a mistake, we realize it, we learn more. Okay, now, what does it mean? It means that the tax on Y is what? Must be 4 times. Okay, 4 times larger lah. 4 times larger than the tax on X. Now that makes sense because why?
So I think you didn't change the rule.
Saya ulang balik. So be TX kat sini ada. Here should be TX, that is TY. So here should be the tax on X. The tax on X must be larger by 4. And the tax on X must be 4 times larger than the tax on Y. Okay, now we got it right. If I still got it wrong, kita balik ya. Itu dia. Okay. So you see here the X is more inelastic than Y. So we know, okay, we know from the principles you must charge tax on X higher. Now by this elasticity rule, we can be, orang kata, more specific. All right? Given the values of the elasticities, at least, okay, to minimize your excess burden, you must tax X 4 times higher than Y. So that give you, you know, a very quite accurate guideline, all right, as how to tax the two goods. Not just rather the tax on X must be higher. Okay, the tax on X must be higher based on, of course, the relationship of the elasticities and the tax rates and the burden of the tax. All right. So based on that thing, okay, based on what we have learned earlier, we can relate. All right, we can relate the what do you call it? The elasticities to the tax rate. Okay, the tax on X, which is more inelastic, is 4 times higher the tax on Y. Now, when the demand is more inelastic, what about the excess burden? Will be higher or smaller?
Smaller.
Smaller. Okay, so it makes sense. You tax the inelastic good higher, and then because why? Because the excess burden is smaller. Okay, because the change in the quantity will be smaller. And then you tax the elastic good. You still tax the elastic good, but you tax it much smaller, 4 times smaller. So the excess burden will be small. So the total excess burden to the, to the economy, since, we consider 2 goods, will be smaller. What about if I tax the elastic good more? I tax Y higher 4 times or 3 times higher than X. What happened to the excess burden? Will it be bigger or smaller? The total excess burden.
Bigger, sir.
Will be bigger. All right. So the rule here says if you want to tax different goods, you tax the inelastic good higher than the one that is more elastic. All right. So that rule, we call it the Ramsey rule. And to get a better picture, you will modify the rule, that thing. So you tax X. So what we learn here is that the tax on goods that are relatively inelastic, higher. Okay. Then the tax on more on goods, I think more on goods with more elastic demand. That will make our excess burden smaller. Okay, total excess burden. All right. So by doing that, we are minimizing. Okay, we are minimizing the total excess burden. For example, we have 2 goods. All right. X is very inelastic. Y is elastic. So, example, in real life, what is X? Demand for a good that is quite inelastic, the demand.
Sugar.
Sugar, not very low. Give me another good that is more, that is, that the demand is very, very inelastic.
Petrol.
Huh?
Minyak kereta.
Apa dia?
Minyak kereta.
Minyak kereta, petrol.
Yeah.
Yeah, petrol, okay. I think petrol can be, or, petrol or rice, okay. Rice is, the demand is very inelastic because the things that normally the demand is inelastic are the goods that you need, okay. Necessities. Sugar not so much lah, okay, but still, it's we can treat that inelastic demand. All right, now why elastic demand, very elastic demand? Okay, example, give me one example. That you don't need that much, you really in life, if you categorize your goods into necessities and then sometimes below the necessities, you don't need that much. You can live without that thing.
Bread, sir.
Goods that are less important in life. Give me one example.
Bread.
Apa dah?
Bread. Roti.
Bread. Okay, for us, bread. But for other people, okay, like Arabic people, Arab, Pakistan, or European, their bread is more inelastic demand than us because we eat rice more than bread. All right. So for us, okay, I'm talking here about Malaysian, you know. I'm not talking about Pakistani or Arab. Arab will be the other way around. For the Arabs, the bread will be very inelastic. Demand rice may be elastic because they don't eat rice that often. Or you know another apa lagi? You know, one example. Give me another example than bread. A better example than bread.
Luxury items.
Specific. Give me one example.
Sofa, sir.
Kereta.
Cars. Okay. Cars. Cars is quite elastic. All right. Because if you don't have cars, you can go by bus or you can go now by Grab or whatever. But this is the example. So by elasticity rule, which good do you tax higher? For example, EX is equal to negative 0.5, EY is equal to negative 2, and we already have the relationship. Which tax do you tax higher, rice or car?
Rice.
Yeah, you tax higher. You tax rice 4 times higher than you tax cars. Okay, so maybe cars harga dia tinggi kan. Find something good that is not so expensive. Apa dia? Other than bread. You know, a good everyday good.
Chocolates.
Chocolate. Okay. So chocolate we don't need that much. So I will tax based on this rule. I will tax rice 4 times higher than chocolate. So that is the rule. Okay, now any problem with the rule? This is efficiency rule, okay? This is efficiency because you want to minimize the excess burden, all right? You want to minimize the excess burden, so that is efficient, is optimum, okay? So that is efficiency rule. You want to have an efficient tax system. So under the efficient tax system, you will tax goods that have higher that have lower elasticity of demand, higher than the goods which have higher elasticity of demand. All right. So that is just efficient. Now, you look at this example. Compare the rice and chocolate. In reality, how does these two goods, affect our life? How much these two goods are needed in our country? Apa dia? Okay, now relate lah. Okay, look at the two goods. Okay, this one and that. And you tax rice higher. Okay. Now you look at the reality. This is what we learn in theory. Okay. You look at the reality in Malaysia, not in other countries. In Malaysia, what is the position of these two goods in our country?
Rice is cheaper than chocolates.
Pardon me?
Rice is cheaper than chocolates.
No, I mean when you do the taxation, when I tax rice 4 times higher than chocolate, okay? Of course, the price, okay? But the price of rice, you buy rice, 5 kg, normally we buy rice. Now, we are talking about here uncooked rice, the rice that you buy, normally they give you 5 kg, 5 kg, the price is at least 20 ringgit. Okay, now, I'm talking about the tax, okay? I'm talking about the tax, you tax rice 4 times higher than chocolate. What do you think?
Rice is much needed than the chocolate.
Rice is a necessity. Okay,
Necessity.
rice is a necessity in our country. Okay, rice is necessity. It is consumed by most of us. Low income, higher income, no income, you eat rice. Okay, now chocolate is quite a luxury good. Not many people eat chocolate anyway. Okay, so by this rule, if I tax rice, let's say the government, PH government or PN government under Muhyiddin Yassin, now they want to raise revenue. So based on this rule, I tax rice. If I tax chocolate 1 ringgit, then I will tax rice 4 times 4 ringgit. Now, what happened to him in the next election?
You will lose.
Lose the election. Okay, because the elasticity rule is only talking about efficiency. Okay, regardless of what? Regardless of the position of the goods and services in the economy, their reality. Okay, most of the inelastic goods, okay, the demand elasticity inelastic, most of these are what? Necessities. Okay, necessities means you need that to survive. Okay, like price, water, you know, maybe to a certain extent fish, okay, or some vegetables. So these are the necessities. And if you tax those goods 4 times higher than chocolate or cars, then you are asking for trouble. Okay, so efficiency criteria, okay, but that is not the only rule that we have to look at. We also need to look at what? The equity. Okay, the equity criteria. Now, what is equity? Equity means fairness. It's a concept, it's a nominal concept. It's a concept of fairness or justice. Okay, is it just? Okay, is it just? Or is it justice to tax rice higher than you tax chocolate? Efficiency, yes. But in terms of equity, no. Okay, so in reality, when the government want to design a tax system, we don't just look at the efficiency criteria. Okay, they need to also look at the justice or the equity. Now, this equity is a value concept. You know, we cannot define what is equity or what is justice. So we know it. Okay, we know the tax on poor people, which the tax on rice, because poor people consume rice, it's not fair. Okay, it's not fair. So that is equity rule, okay, or equity criteria. And the equity criteria, that is not fair. So you have to balance up, okay? You have to balance up the equitable concept and the efficiency concept. Okay, there are 2 principles that we normally look at when you do the tax. One is the ability to pay. Ability to pay means what? Means you have the resources to pay. Okay, we have the resources to pay the tax. Normally, the resources can be your wealth, can be anything, but sometimes, you know, most convenient way is income. All right, resources, it can be anything, can be your wealth, can be your assets, your income. But let us consider income. It can be easily seen, but that is not the only criteria. Okay, so you have the income to pay. So under the ability to pay, this imply what? They imply that if I have more income, okay, income higher, then what? then higher ability to pay. Okay, higher ability to pay. So that is one criteria, higher ability to pay. So if you, under this criteria, then, you know, if you tax the poor people, I mean, if you tax goods that have lower elasticity of demand, and that good is consumed by everyone, not just the rich, but also, more importantly, by the poor, which or the lower income group, which are what? Which is the higher percentage of the population. So under the ability to pay, it may not be, you know, it may not be really applicable. Okay. Okay, what is the other? Okay, the other principle is the benefit principle. The benefit principle. Benefit principle means if I have more benefit to that thing, okay, if I benefit more, then I pay more. All right, if you benefit more, you pay more. Example, the toll, oh no, the toll, yeah, toll can also be like that. The road tax. Okay, road tax. Now the tax that you pay when you have a vehicle, okay, when you have a vehicle, you pay road tax. So the money that comes from the road tax, the revenue, will go to where? Will go to road maintenance, okay, or road building of new roads, or maintenance of road. Because under benefit principle, I use the road, I pay tax, I benefit. Okay, so the tax that I collect, or the government collect from that good or service, must go back into that service or that good. So that is the benefit principle. So the money that I get from the road tax should be built or should be used to road maintenance, not going to increase the salary of you know, government officers. Okay, shouldn't be that. It should be going back to that market. Right. So that is what you call benefit principle. And of course, this benefit principle doesn't always work. You know, sometimes when you pay tax, you don't necessarily benefit more. Okay. Sometimes you don't pay that high tax, you benefit more. So benefit principle, that is the idea. Okay. All right. So that, you know, the equity perspective, I think maybe we need to go into it a little bit more detail. Equity, that means, you know, it's a value loaded concept. Is it fair? Okay, is it fair to do that, to charge a good, or is it fair to tax a good highly relative to another good? Of course, in terms of efficiency criteria, it is efficient. So efficiency criteria and the equity criteria may not be consistent. Okay, it can be efficient, but it may not be equitable. So in reality, you have to balance up. Okay, you have to balance up the equity and the efficiency criteria. So this one, you know, you need to consider both lah. You have to balance up. In reality, all right. Okay. All right. Another thing is, when you want to minimize the excess burden, another approach is what you call the base broadening. Base broadening. Base broadening principle. Criteria. Now, base broadening criteria, you tax, okay? You impose a tax. Impose tax on many goods, as many as possible, on many goods, you know. So here in the country, most goods and services, you tax as many as you can, but at lower rates. So when you tax many goods at lower rates, that will contribute to the reduction of the total excess burden. So our total excess burden can be minimized. So instead of taxing, okay, instead of taxing, if you look at the criteria or the efficiency criteria or the elasticity rule, okay, the first one is elasticity rule, the Ramsey rule. The elasticity rule, you tax the goods that are more inelastic higher than the tax on the goods with higher elasticity. All right, so some goods you tax very high, some goods you tax very low, some goods you tax medium. Now, in this perspective, you tax as many goods as you can, but tax them low. Okay, so by doing that, excess burden can be minimized. So these are the two principles. All right, this principle number 2. That was principle number 3. Number 1. Sometimes, you know, you can use both. You know, you can be efficient. At the same time, you will just tax all as many goods as possible in the market at lower rates. Okay, so that is the criteria. Okay, all right. So for this kind of good, you know, maybe we can look at the excess burden. We look at this, you know, you look at two goods. You look at two goods where you have you can draw this. You have the supply and the demand, and then you have the tax, and also similarly for this one, I have the tax here. All right. So now what we do, you tax both goods smaller. So you can see here that is the excess burden. Okay, here you have another excess burden. But now if I tax both smaller, all right, but I tax both of these goods. Katakan ni S2. Now should be smaller. Ni berapa kecil lagi. Okay, make it smaller. Macam tu. Now, what happened to the excess burden, the total excess burden? You look at the situation before the tax. The total excess burden will be that black area, the triangle, that black area here. Now, if I tax them smaller, S2, our excess burden now will be that area here and the area here. Okay, what about the excess burden, the total of the two markets? Will be smaller or be higher?
Smaller.
Be smaller. So now, what this means is this: you look at here one market, two market. So what we can do, you know, in order to make this more clear, you introduce another market. All right. So let's say now instead of I tax 2 goods, I tax 3 goods. So I have another good here, third market. And we do the same thing. We do the tax small. You see? So if you can look at the 3, now I tax 3 markets. The total excess burden, 1, 2, 3, can be smaller than what? Than the total excess burden under the 2 markets, under in the initial tax system. Okay, so here I can tax 3 markets, so I can increase the number of goods that I tax. Increase number of goods tax, and then the excess burden can be smaller. Okay, so example here, if I tax only 2 goods at the initial tax level, so the excess burden will be the black area, and under the broadening base principle, I tax a third good. Okay, I tax a third good and small. So as you can see, the total excess burden, the red one here, in the 3 markets is still smaller than the total excess burden under the 2 market. So you can tax, so that this criteria is better, rather than you tax goods high and not that many, you tax as many as you can, but at much lower rates. So the excess burden, the total excess burden can be smaller. Okay, all right. Okay, anything else I miss? I've done the ad valorem, I've done the optimal taxation. So the elasticity rule, okay, is the inverse elasticity rule. Okay, so if the tax is imposed on the firm, on the consumers, I'm sorry. If the tax is imposed on the consumers, that will be backward shifting. Say forward shifting, the incidence, the statutory incidence is on the firms. It will transfer some of the burden to the consumers. That is forward shifting. Now, if the buyers is imposed the tax, the burden of the tax, some of them will be transferred to the firms. We call it backward shifting. Backward shifting. Okay. All right. So forward, backward. Forward means from the firms to the consumers. Backward from the consumers to the firms. Okay. So I think I've done most of this. Oh yeah, there is another thing. The equity, equity. But that one, there is, the concept of equity. There are 2. But I don't know whether it's relevant to what we're doing. But it is more on the income tax, But on the price tax, I don't know whether this one. This is the vertical equity versus horizontal equity. I think income tax, income tax will be more relevant. it's like this. Vertical equity means you compare income across groups. So here you have the lower income. Here you have the highest. Okay, here the lowest lah. So in other words, the tax in terms of vertical equity, meaning that the higher your income, okay, the higher your resources, that you have the resources, means higher resources, or one measure of it is income. What does it imply? It implies you have to pay higher taxes, more taxes. Okay? Applicable juga kat sini. How does it apply to the goods tax? How does it apply to tax on goods and services? The higher income group pay higher taxes than the lower income group. How can you apply this principle to the tax system of goods and services?
Expensive items get taxed more.
So the higher income people, normally they will consume the one that is more costly, price higher. You just look at, watch. Watch can cost about, Datuk Seri Najib watch, or Datuk Siti Rosmah, the watch can cost millions. Okay, so here can be very expensive, say 50,000. I don't know what kind of watch is that. And some watch, you go to the shop, it can be as low as 20 ringgit. Okay, so when you do the tax on watch, you tax the this kind of good high. Okay, so in other words, the luxury goods you tax high. Now, luxury goods, is it elastic or is it inelastic in terms of the demand?
Elastic.
It's quite elastic, but you tax them high. Why? Because of the vertical equity. All right. Some of the goods that inelastic demand, like rice, okay, higher percentage of people who are in the lower income group consume them. So it is not fair to tax. Now, horizontal equity is you look at not across income group, you look at over the same income group. So same income, okay, same resources or same income, pay what? Same tax. So that is horizontal equity. Okay, that means if our income is 5,000, one person, and the other person 5,000, same income, you pay same tax. So that is horizontal equity. So equity, can be, there are two measures. One is vertical. Vertical, I think, can be intuitively be seen. But horizontal, not that straightforward, because you have same income, me and you have same income, so we pay same taxes. So I myself, I cannot relate, how is it fair? I think it's automatically fair, I have same income, so I pay same tax. But this one probably more applicable in the income tax. But in terms of the excise tax or the price tax, I don't think it make much effect. Right? But this is important, all right? This concept of equity is important, vertical equity. Okay, anything else? All right. So next week, I will go through that chapter to see is there anything that we need to look at, you know, if there is any. If there is none, then we move on to either, okay, depending on our time, how many more weeks we have left. Either we move to income tax, or we look at the deficit, or we look at subsidy. There are 3 more chapters that actually normally I cover, you know, but this semester I couldn't do it, maybe of the shortage of time. Maybe one period was the holiday, you know. So if I couldn't cover any of those topics, what I will do, I will put a recording, you know. I've recorded all those things last semester. So maybe a recording of those chapters I just put online, you know, so that if you have time, or if you want to, you can review those. Otherwise, you don't have to. Okay. So next week, I'm not sure yet. I'm thinking either we go to income tax, I will cover deficit, or cover the subsidy, because we have 3 more weeks left. So 3 more weeks or 2 more weeks starting next week.
2 more. 2 more weeks.
Kan? 2 more. So maybe I will cover maybe one chapter and a half. All right. So let me think over the weekend. Okay. So I will see you again. Have a nice weekend. Take care of yourself. COVID-19 is, you know, still rising the cases. Take care. So I'll see you again. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm sorry. Today I don't know. You know, I don't know what repair they are doing. It's really a loud noise. So that is a negative externality. You hear that sound? Boleh dengar?
Tak dengar.
Tak dengar? Okey, bagus.
Tahan
Saya
je.
dengar kuat. Bentung, bum, 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 bum. Macam dia tebuk lubang kat jalan tu. Okay, I'll see you again. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay,
Thank you,
take care.
sir.